This content is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Getting the Most Out of Your Physique. This is part 2 of 5. Today, we're going to talk about diet optimization. So, how do you structure your diet? What do you need to be doing to get the most out of your physique development? Last week in our ranking video, we put diet number 1, training number 2, recovery number 3, and drugs number 4. So today we're talking about diet number 1. How do you get the most out of your diet? So there are going to be 4 levels to building the perfect diet for you. You're going to be able to see those here. Number 1, the most important aspect of building the perfect diet to fit your goals is going to be calories and macros. So calories in, calories out, it works. People are going to tell you, well, hormones or cortisol or keto or whatever they say. Uh, Calories in, calories out is how you get there. The macro split determines body composition. So calories determine energy balance. If you're eating in a calorie surplus, you're going to gain weight. If you're eating in a calorie deficit, you're going to lose weight. But where are you going to gain and lose that weight? That's where macros come in. So calories and macros are at the same level of importance here. Your protein needs to be high. So whenever you're talking about building your diet, protein is at least 1 gram per pound of body weight. But I like to go a little bit higher than that. 1.25 is kind of where I like to set 1.5, 1.25, somewhere in there. So currently I'm about 180 pounds. I'm eating about 225 grams of protein. So that is 1.25 grams per pound of body weight. And next is going to be your fats. So I like to keep fats somewhere around 20% of your total calorie intake. Uh, Protein and fats, I like to treat set it and forget it. So we're going to pick a protein number, 1.2 grams per pound, and then we're going to pick a fat number. So generally, what I will do is I will keep fats between zero point 0.6 and zero point 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. Sometimes might go a little bit lower than that. I can't think really of any reason to go higher than that, but right now you know, I'm about zero point 0.6 or yeah, zero point 0.6 grams per kilogram of body weight is where I got my fat set, and that's where they'll be. I'm in kind of a gaining phase or an improvement phase right now, so they don't need to be super low. They help with satiety, they help with hormones, but they don't do a whole lot as far as developing a physique. Where you're going to get the most bang for your buck and where you're going to be able to move the needle here is with carbs. So your carbs are going to take up the rest of your diet. So when you're in a surplus, your carbs are going to be pretty high. When you're in a deficit, your carbs may get pretty low because we're gonna leave protein and fats pretty well alone. We're gonna make our adjustment with carbs. Now, towards the end of a deficit, when we really need to cut calories, we may cut some calories from fats, drop them down to that zero point 0.5 gram per kilogram of body weight, and really try to pull that last layer of fat off. But protein, if you guys don't know this, that is what your muscles are made out of. So if you're not eating enough protein, whether you're in a calorie surplus, in a calorie deficit, whatever it may be, you're going to have some deleterious effects to your physique. So we need to be eating enough protein to grow. I'm just going to talk about growing for right now, about building muscle, about putting on size. Uh, we need to eat enough protein to grow. We need to have enough fats that we're not, you know, deficient in any of our vitamins. So there's a lot of fat soluble vitamins like vitamin D, vitamin A. We don't want to be deficient in those. And so we need enough fat to take those up and enough fat to produce hormones, which is less than you probably think. If you're at, you know, 0.5 grams per kilogram, you're going to be good there. And everything else is going to be carbs. So why are carbs so high? Carbs are what restores your glycogen. Carbs fuel training performance, give you energy. Your body prefers to run on glucose, or your body will run on glucose. It has to. And so if you're not eating enough carbs to do those things, it will start to make glucose from protein. This is a process called gluconeogenesis. So it takes protein, breaks it down into glucose, and uses that to fuel your body. That's why people say there's no essential carbs, because really there isn't. Your body can make its own glucose, but it prefers to get it from the carbs you eat. So we want to keep our fats low, our protein, and our carbs high. Level two here, this is a problem that I see a lot of people having with why they can't reach their physique goals. And it is tied back to diet. It's also tied back to mindset and stuff a little bit, but we're going to tie it to diet here. Accuracy and consistency. So you have your perfect plan. You're gonna put on some muscle here. Uh, you've got your fat set at the right level there, because they actually have done studies. It's really hard to store carbs as fat. It has to go through a process called de novo lipogenesis, which is where it turns from glucose into basically cholesterol and gets stored as adipose tissue or fat. So it's really hard to store carbs as fat. So that's another reason we want to keep our fats low and our carbs high. Almost all the adipose tissue you have on your body started out as dietary fat. There's some studies that you can look up if you want to know more about that. But you've got this plan made up. You hollered at me. We talked, had a consultation, talked about a diet, got you set up. The perfect calories, the perfect macros. All you have to do is do it. So if you're not consistent and you're not accurate with your tracking, it's not going to work. So I'm not a huge fan of if it fits your macros or flexible dieting, because I think it lets people just kind of go off the rails. They find a way to fit whatever food they want, whether it's a, you know, double, you know, son of a baconator or whatever you get at Wendy's, trying to fit that into your diet. If your goal is to build a physique, there's not really much of a place for that, guys. Take some time off, do whatever. But if you're in a dieting phase, or you're in a phase where you're really trying to focus on putting on muscle and not getting fat, if it fits your macros, flexible dieting is really tough to make work. Not saying that you have to eat off a meal plan every day, but trying to fit what's basically junk food into your diet to fulfill your goals is kind of problematic. But accuracy, back to accuracy and consistency. So they won't track. People will estimate. They, you know, guess I had 6 ounces of chicken breast and, you know, 200 grams of rice and whatever. Uh, they're guessing. People aren't good at guessing. I've done studies on this too. Normally they're off by about 50% or so. So you need to be weighing and measuring things if you're serious about building a physique. You need to be weighing and measuring all your food. If it goes into your mouth, it should have been weighed and measured before it did that. Now, the consistency part of it. Of course, this is sticking with the plan, doing the same thing every day as far as the calories and macros, not just going off the rails on the weekends, but it's a little bit deeper than that. So what I see a lot of the time is people doing little mini bulks or mini cuts, which I'm not a fan of. Uh, Mini cuts have a purpose. They have a time. Uh, Mini bulks don't really have a purpose or a time. refeed or a maintenance period diet break, that type of stuff has a time and place. But what people call a mini bulk, where they try to put on muscle for 8 weeks or whatever, there's really no place for that. That's one of the critiques that people give all the time about these hypertrophy studies. Well, they're only 12 weeks long. That's not enough time to really build muscle. Well, the same people will turn around and they'll say, I'm going to do a mini bulk for 8 weeks. Well, dude, you just said 12 weeks wasn't long enough to notice any meaningful muscle gain. So you need to stick with your plan for long term. Your gaining phases need to be long enough that you can actually accrue some tissue. Your dieting phases, fat loss dieting phases, they need to be long enough that you can actually lose some tissue. Because at the beginning of your diet, especially if you slashed carbs pretty hard to get your deficit, you set up a 500 calorie a day deficit. That's what, 125 grams of carbs you pulled out. You're going to lose a lot of water weight. You're going to lose a lot of glycogen. You're going to lose a lot of subcutaneous water, extracellular water, all that stuff. And so, right there at the beginning, you're going to notice a large amount of weight loss. That's not tissue, that's just water. And so, you have to be accurate whenever you're tracking things. You have to be accurate. You have to it has to be the same. It doesn't even necessarily have to be accurate. If you're going to use uncooked weights for all of your food that you track, then all your food needs to be uncooked. If you're, doing 6 ounces of uncooked chicken, that's perfectly fine. But tomorrow, do 6 ounces of uncooked chicken. Don't do, 6 ounces of cooked chicken tomorrow. Keep it consistent. Keep it accurate. That is going to be how you get progress over the long term. Number three, so we talked about fat quantity earlier. Uh, there's no reason for a physique athlete to be going really much over, you know, zero point 0.7, zero point 0.8 grams per kilogram of dietary fat. That's going to cover you for your 0.5 is going to cover you, but it opens you up to eat a little bit more food, a little bit more flexibly, and still be eating clean though, uh, and have a little bit higher satiety if you go up to that, zero point 0.6 gram per kilogram area, zero point 0.7 somewhere in there. But we talked about quantity. Now we need to talk about quality. So on muscle gain diets, I see guys screw this up a lot. They will start a muscle gain diet, and even if, their guy's only eating 60 grams of fat a day, uh, that'll be 60 grams of fat from things like bologna and cheese and butter. Like, they're terrible fat sources. Garbage food, there's not a place for it in somebody who's trying to build a physique. There's not a place for it in your diet. Saturated fats, there's not much of a reason to consume saturated fat outside of things like dairy and lean red meat. So I'm saying lean red meat because things like beef bologna is a red meat. Uh, you're not going to find me eating beef bologna as a good source of protein. But lean cuts of red meat, so you know, eye round, top round, uh, 93.7 or leaner ground beef, those types of things. Lots of vitamins, lots of micronutrients, creatine in those. Like, those are healthy foods. Those are things you should be eating. The fat content in those foods is saturated fat, though. We just take that as it comes. Dairy, same thing. So if you're eating, you know, uh, or if you're drinking 2% milk or something like that, there's nothing wrong with that. Calcium, vitamin D, all the good stuff. Uh, but the fat is saturated fat. So the only reason that we should be taking in saturated fat is because it's coming from a lean protein source. Uh, but why am I so against saturated fat? Saturated fat is not benefiting your health in any way from a physique standpoint. It's not benefiting your goals, it's not benefiting your health. Uh, a high saturated fat diet leads to insulin resistance. That's how they make rats insulin resistant. I know we're not rats, uh, so you can't exactly take this, but they feed rats just a high saturated fat rat chow whenever they want to make them insulin resistant for a study. So take that with what you will. Also, diabetes is basically at this point, we can tie type 2 diabetes back to diets that are high in saturated fats and high in processed sugars simultaneously. So the high sugar doesn't necessarily do it. The high saturated fat doesn't necessarily do it, although there's plenty of things high saturated fat can do. It can skew your lipids, uh, cause elevated LDL, lower HDL, all of those things. Especially if you're an enhanced athlete, you're already taking drugs that do that. You don't need to be eating food that does that. So all of your fats, all of your added fats, I should say, should be coming from unsaturated sources. Things like fatty fish, so mackerel, salmon, sardines, if you can stand those, uh, nuts, olive oils. Poly and monounsaturated fats are good. Also, dark chocolate has a little bit of saturated fat in it. There's a small difference there in the type of saturated fat. I'm not going to go into the difference, but dark chocolate is a great fat source. So you're 80 to 100% cocoa. Uh, there's no problem there. But we need to keep our saturated fats low. We need to keep our trans fats basically at zero, which not much has any trans fats in it anymore. Essential omega 3s. So I always like to supplement with omega 3s. So 2 to 3 grams of EPA and DHA combined a day is what I take as a fish oil supplement. It's what I recommend all my clients take just because it can be hard to get the omega 3s in otherwise. Walnuts, great source of omega 3s. Salmon, mackerel, we already talked about that. Fiber. What do I recommend for fiber? So fiber is difficult, especially on a muscle gain phase. On a fat loss phase, it's super easy to eat a bunch of fiber because things like cucumbers and zucchini and lettuce, all this stuff, it has plenty of fiber in it, very few calories. We can eat a ton of it. We like it. It adds bulk to the gut, uh, slows down your digestion, helps you feel a little fuller for a little bit longer. But on a muscle gain phase, a lot of guys will cut out their fiber. What I recommend is 10 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories per day. So if you're eating, 3,000 calories, that should be 30 grams of fiber minimum a day from both soluble and insoluble sources. So things like sweet potatoes, oats, fruits, vegetables, all of that stuff. Always like to recommend a kilogram of fruits and vegetables per day for people. So that's combined and from different sources. Variety of sources, fruits and vegetables, 1 kilogram per day should give you enough fiber. Think about your insoluble fiber too, things like oats, potatoes, sweet potatoes. Uh, that is help with overall health. So fiber is good for your cholesterol. So most of your cholesterol comes from your gut. We could talk about that in a deep dive video later on, but the fiber is going to help keep your LDL down. It's going to help keep your HDL up, overall keep you healthier. It's good for your digestion. So soluble fiber that forms the bulk of your stool, so to speak, and then insoluble fiber that is what keeps you regular. So you want to be getting plenty of those, along with unsaturated fats. PUFAs and MUFAs is what we call them, so poly and monounsaturated fats. This makes a pretty big difference in physique outcomes. That's why it's right here just above accuracy and consistency, because two diets that are exact same calories and macros are going to have, wildly different outcomes if the fat sources are bacon, butter, and cheese versus walnuts and mackerel and eggs, that type of stuff. Eggs is another source of saturated fat, but they have choline and those things in them, and so we're gonna eat our eggs. Like I love my eggs. I'm gonna keep eating them, even though saturated fat. But the last thing that you need to focus on to optimize your nutrition for physique development is going to be nutrient timing. So when do you eat what and how much of it do you eat? So the big one here is timing carbs around your peri-workout window. So pre, intra, post, you should be taking in a lot of carbs. So I train first thing in the morning, so I'll kind of give you guys my setup here. Is I'll do right first thing when I wake up, 1 scoop of highly branched cyclic dextrin from Titan, I might add, and then 1 scoop of clear whey isolate. And so that's 25 grams of carbs, 20 grams of protein, and then I'll do 2 rice cakes with a little bit of jam on them or a little bit of honey on them. And so I'm getting, let's see, what is that? 60 grams of carbs. And then I'll go about my morning routine, whether that's packing my bag for the day or doing whatever I need to get ready to go to the gym and then go to work from there. And then as I leave, I'll make myself my intra, which is another 25 grams of carbs from cyclic dextrin and another 20 grams of protein from clear isolate. I will drink that within the workout. So I'm getting 80 to 85 grams of carbs pre and intra. And then post workout, my post workout meal is going to be my largest meal and highest carb meal of the day. We're going to do, and so zero fats, right? I said no fat sources before or during my workout. Fats slow down your digestion a little bit. That's not what you want if you're training first thing in the morning. You want to get that food into the bloodstream as quickly as possible. So, post workout, I'm going to do really high carb, pretty high protein, and still pretty low fat for the day. So, or pretty low fat compared to the rest of my day. So I'll do something like 100 grams of carbs, 45, 50 grams of protein, and 10 grams of fat, if that. Normally from something like some, you know, cashews or pecans, walnuts, maybe some nut butter. Uh, on the weekends when I have time to cook post workout, I might do some eggs. Uh, 5 grams of fat, so I'll do 2 eggs, get 10 grams of fat there. But that is what that looks like. And then, of course, around sleep, you're going to want some carbs before you go to sleep. 30 grams of carbs or so I find is really helpful, mainly from fruit like kiwis, blueberries, mandarin oranges, that type of stuff. It helps with serotonin production and helps with actually drifting off to sleep. Just a light meal with a few grams of carbs, and then multiple uh, protein feedings throughout the day. So 5 to 6 is what I find works best for most people. Because if you're eating, 225 grams of protein, splitting it up over 5 meals is very doable. Splitting that's like 45 grams of protein per meal. Splitting it up over 3 meals is not as doable. That comes to like what 380 grams of protein per meal, and so that's a lot of food that you have to put down at once. Uh, a lot of chicken breast, a lot of eggs, whatever you're using for your protein source, you're putting a lot of it down at once to get that 80 grams per meal. So 5 6 meals a day. How you want to structure your nutrient timings. Make sure you've got you know, the protein feeding every 4 hours at least. You want to spike leucine every 4 hours. So protein quality is another one we could talk about here. I don't have it on the list here, but not all protein is created the same. So your leucine content is going to be a big deal. Animal sources, so chicken, beef, eggs, whey, dairy, they all are what we consider complete proteins. They have complete amino acid profiles. Eating multiple times a day, uh, 4 or 5 times, maybe even 6 times a day, if you're trying to get a lot of food in, is going to be very helpful for that. Um, around your workout window, lots of carbs, lower fats so the food can get into your bloodstream quicker. And then before bed, like I said, lower carb meal, so 30 to 50 grams of carbs max there from like a slower digesting source, something like fruit, I find does really well. And then I'll do a little bit higher fat meal here, maybe somewhere close to, 15, 20 grams of fat, uh, and then a higher protein. So 40 grams of protein, 20 grams of fat, 30 grams of carbs, something like that. But that is how I would recommend you set your diet up if you're looking to get the most out of your physique. So just a quick recap is you have to have your calories and macros sorted. So your total calorie intake has to reflect your goal, whether it's gain weight, lose weight, whatever it may be. Energy expenditure or energy intake is going to be king there. So your total calorie intake has to reflect your goal, and your macronutrients need to allow you to achieve that. So your protein needs to be high enough that you can either maintain or build muscle. Your fats need to be low enough that you're not over consuming them, so zero point 0.6 to zero point 0.8 grams per kilogram, and that's going to allow for plenty of carbs to fuel training, all that good stuff. And carbs are really hard to store as fat, so on a muscle gain diet, that is what we like to see there. And then accuracy and consistency. Whatever your goal is, you need to stick with it. Don't be changing from bulking and cutting every 6 weeks. You're going to look the same. The guys that do this year after year, they look the same in the gym. There's nothing, they're not making any progress. There's nothing going on there. Accuracy, be, be consistent with your accuracy. So, like I said, use the same measurements. Something I do that's kind of inaccurate, but it's a constant, and so you know, I rock with it. Every banana I eat is 30 grams of carbs. Some are going to be a little bit bigger. Some are going to be a little bit smaller, but I just count them all 130 grams. They're all 30 grams of carbs. Little things like that. Uh, not super accurate, but if you're consistent with that and it's constant, then no big deal. But just be consistent with the way you're tracking, how you're tracking, and then your fat and your fiber. So 10 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories is going to be a good start there. That's going to help with your gut health, going to help control some cholesterol, uh, keep you regular. And then your fat sources, you want to keep saturated fats about as low as possible. The only saturated fats you really should be getting would be from your protein sources. That's the only place you should be getting your saturated fats from. Outside of that, we don't need to be eating any butter, cheese, those things. Poly and monounsaturated fats, omega 3 fatty acids, a supplement with your omega 3s, that is going to make a big deal. Nuts, oils, that type of stuff is going to be where you're going to want to get your fat from. And then nutrient timing. So a lot of carbs around your workout window, a little bit of carbs, higher protein, uh, higher fat around your sleep time window there. And then make sure you're getting multiple protein feedings a day. So about every 4 hours is going to be ideal to get some protein in. But if you can set your diet up like I've laid out here, you're going to be getting the most out of your physique. There's some other things that we could spend some more time talking about, such as digestion, absorption. Maybe I'll make a gut health and digestion video later on. But for now, I've been Justin Jennings with Jennings Performance Coaching. Don't let your diet hold you back. Take care of these things, and you will be very surprised at what you see as in the form of results. If you like this video, subscribe, give it a like, leave me a comment, let me know. If you didn't like this video, leave me a comment, let me know what I got wrong, let me know that I'm an idiot. All of my links are down in the video description. So coaching website, Instagram, Titan Nutrition's where I get all my supplements. Use my code TITANJPC for 20% off your order. Uh, as of right now, they still have their apple pie whey, and that has been my go-to. I've been cooking that into everything: cream of rice, oatmeal, all of that stuff. Little fall flavor there for you guys. My newsletter goes out every Monday. We have diet, training, PEDs, recovery, mindset, all of that stuff on there. The link for that will be down below. And until next time,